Imagine a single law, passed with the best intentions, to protect a nation's workers, boost its economy, and flex a little muscle on the global stage. Now imagine that same law, decades later, helping to ignite a war that would claim tens of millions of lives. This is the story of the McKinley Tariff of 1890, a piece of American legislation that seemed like a win at the time, but whose echoes would stretch across oceans and continents, all the way to the battlefields of World War I. It's a tale of good intentions gone wrong, where the pursuit of dollars and cents spiraled into a desperate fight for survival, and a reminder that even the best-laid plans can unravel when the measures we choose don't match the stakes at play. Let's step back to 1890. The United States is flexing its industrial might. Factories are humming, but American workers and businesses are worried about cheap foreign goods flooding the market. Enter William McKinley, a congressman from Ohio with a vision. He pushes through the McKinley Tariff, a bold policy that jacks up taxes on imported goods, some as high as 49%. The goal? Protect American jobs, boost local industries, and fill the government's coffers with revenue. And you know what? It worked at first. American manufacturers thrived, wages stabilized, and the U.S. strutted onto the world stage as an economic powerhouse. Farmers grumbled about higher costs for tools and retaliatory tariffs from Europe, but for the most part, it was a domestic success. McKinley himself rode this victory all the way to the presidency. But here's the catch. The world wasn't just watching, it was learning. Other nations saw the McKinley Tariff and thought, hey, we can play that game too. Protectionism, the idea of shielding your own economy with tariffs, started spreading like wildfire. Germany under Kaiser Wilhelm II was industrializing fast but lacked the vast natural resources of the U.S. coal, iron, timber. They had some but not enough to keep pace with their ambitions. Japan, meanwhile, was waking up as a modern power after centuries of isolation. An island nation with even fewer resources, barely any oil, limited arable land. They were hungry to compete. Both countries looked at America's tariff strategy and adapted it, not just for profit, but for survival. Why survival? Because for them, it wasn't about padding bank accounts. It was about securing the raw materials they desperately needed to grow, to arm themselves, to not be left behind in a world that was starting to feel like a zero-sum game. By the early 20th century, this tariff trend had morphed into something darker. Germany slapped tariffs on imports to protect its steel and chemical industries, but that meant they needed colonies or trade deals to secure coal and iron, resources often controlled by rivals like Britain and France. Japan, too, raised tariffs to build its own industries. But with no oil or rubber at home, they turned their eyes to China and Southeast Asia. What started as an American play for monetary gain became, for these nations, a scramble for existence. The U.S. could afford to focus on profit. It had sprawling farmland, coal mines, and oil fields. Germany and Japan didn't. For them, every tariff their rivals imposed felt like a chokehold, cutting off the lifeline of resources they needed to survive. And when you're fighting for survival, not just profit, the stakes get personal and deadly. Now fast forward to the 1910s. The world's a tinderbox. Tariffs and trade wars have carved up global markets into hostile blocs. Germany's boxed in by Britain and France, who control vast colonial resources. Japan's feeling the squeeze as Western powers lock up Asia's riches. Alliances form, militaries swell, and mistrust festers. Then in 1914, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand lights the match, but the fire's been building for decades. The McKinley Tariff didn't cause World War I on its own. No single spark lights a blaze that big, but it helped set the stage. It showed nations how to weaponize trade, how to turn economic policy into a tool of exclusion, pushing resource-starved powers like Germany and Japan into a corner. And when the war broke out, it wasn't just a clash of empires. It was a proving ground for a new kind of slaughter, fueled by machines born from industrial rivalry. The tariffs and trade battles had supercharged industrial competition, and that meant militaries weren't just bigger, they were deadlier. Take tanks. Britain rolled out the Mark I in 1916, a lumbering steel beast with tracks that could crush barbed wire and plow through trenches. Germany scrambled to catch up, but the damage was done. Hundreds could be mowed down in minutes. Then there were warplanes. Early in the war, flimsy biplanes like the Sopwith Camel buzzed overhead, dropping grenades by hand. By 1918, they'd evolved into fighters armed with machine guns and bombers like Germany's Gotha GV, raining death on cities. Machine guns, already brutal, got mass-produced. Models like the Vickers could fire 600 rounds a minute, turning battlefields into meat grinders. Add poison gas, chlorine, mustard, that choked thousands in seconds, and submarines like Germany's U-boats sinking ships with torpedoes, and you've got a war where technology made killing fast, efficient, and horrifyingly impersonal. All this came from the industrial race that tariffs like McKinley's kicked off. The U.S. built wealth, Germany and Japan built war machines to secure what they couldn't buy. Over 4 years, 16 million died, torn apart by tank shells, shredded by strafing runs, gassed in trenches, and 20 million more were wounded, not just over tariffs, but over the rivalries and resource wars they'd fueled. What started as a quest for economic edge had armed the world for mass destruction. So what's the lesson here? The McKinley Tariff wasn't evil. It was a policy with good intent: protect jobs, grow wealth, and it even had some wins. But its measure of success was all wrong. America judged it by monetary gain, while nations like Germany and Japan came to see trade barriers as matters of life and death. That's the disconnect. The benefits landed unevenly, and the costs, oh, they piled up where no one expected. The U.S. got richer, others got desperate, and when desperation meets ambition, you get conflict. Policies aren't just numbers on a ledger, they're moves on a global chessboard, and one wrong measure can tip the board into chaos. Next time someone says a law's a simple fix, remember the McKinley Tariff and the tens of millions of lives caught in its shadow. Good intentions don't guarantee good endings, not when the yardstick's off.